I was accepted into a prestigious university with top honors, but my parents wanted to sever all ties with me on the spot. They even tried to snatch the acceptance letter from my hands. However, I didn't hesitate for a second. I agreed to sever the relationship without a second thought. The reason was simple. In my past life, I was lying in a hospital bed, with no one to sign my surgery papers. I watched helplessly as the doctors pulled out my breathing tube and turned off the heart monitor. In the end, I suffocated and died in the middle of the night. My parents and brother, all they cared about was fighting over my inheritance. They didn't even want to sign the papers for my surgery. Now that I've been reborn, I swear I will make them pay for what they did. Chapter 1. How heartless can you be, George? How can you treat your brother like this? He's your real brother. A middle-aged woman's angry shouting snapped me out of my daze. Suddenly, my mind cleared, and I saw the dilapidated cement house in front of me. The place was empty, with nothing on the walls except for a few old Chinese New Year paintings, which was the only decoration in the house. Seeing this, the most painful memory I had been trying to avoid suddenly resurfaced. This was the summer when I was 18. That day, I had received my admission letter to one of the best universities in the country. I was overjoyed and stuffed the letter into my pocket, rushing home to show it to my parents. I thought that with this letter, they would be proud of me. At least, that's what I thought. But when I got home, my parents were only happy for 2 seconds before sighing deeply. They exchanged a glance, and then my mother spoke up first. George, you know your brother didn't do well on his exams. Your father and I know that you've done well. So, since you're capable, why don't you give the acceptance letter to Martin so he can go to school instead? Martin and I are twins, and we look alike. If you didn't know us well, you wouldn't be able to tell us apart. Because of this, we often got confused by the neighbors and classmates. It was for this very reason that my parents suggested I give up my place in university. I asked in disbelief, wait, are you asking me to give my acceptance letter to Martin so he can go to school? My mother sighed. The family situation isn't good. You need to think about the family, not just yourself. I asked, so what about me? Should I repeat a year? My mother replied, we don't have money to send you to school again. I've already found a job for you. There's a construction site in the county starting tomorrow. Go work there and earn some tuition for your brother. Without this acceptance letter, your brother will be ruined. Can you bear to see him waste his life? As for you, your father and I believe in your ability. You'll succeed in the future. So help your brother out. No, I shouted in anger. A slap echoed through the room, and everything went black. I fell, hitting my head against the corner of the table, blood dripping from my forehead. As I remembered this, I sighed deeply. Back then, I couldn't oppose my father's firm resolve, nor could I withstand my mother's crying and threats of suicide. I had no choice but to agree. I ended up working at the construction site. Within a year, the contractor noticed me, and I worked my way up, eventually co-founding a construction company. Meanwhile, Martin, though he replaced me at the top university, failed every subject and often got into trouble, eventually being expelled. Then my parents came to me again, crying outside my company's office, demanding I help Martin. I had no choice but to give him a position at the company. Years later, Martin was bought off by a rival company, stealing my important files and causing me to be fired by the board of directors. I lost everything, falling into depression and ending up in the hospital. Now that I've been reborn, I will never let these leeches take anything from me again. I stood up, wiped the blood from my forehead, and said with determination, from today onwards, I don't want a single penny from you. I'll earn my own tuition, but don't even think about taking my acceptance letter. My father, shocked that I, who had always obeyed them, would speak to them like this, stood up and glared at me. You little brat, say that again. Are you trying to kill your mother and me? He raised his hand as if to strike me, but before he could, I grabbed his wrist, and the coldness in my eyes made him shudder. Through gritted teeth, I said, do you think I'll let you hit me again? George, are you crazy? You dare to hit your father? At that moment, my good brother Martin ran back from outside, grabbing me and preparing to strike. A loud slap resounded. The whole house went silent. The next moment, Martin screamed hysterically, George, you dare hit me, I'm going to fight you. Since childhood, Martin had always been the favored one. He had never been asked to do any work, and although our family was poor, he was raised like a pampered prince, indulged and spoiled. I grabbed his hair and kicked him in the stomach, sending him sprawling to the ground, crying out in pain. My mother, banging her fists on the table, shouted, you've gone mad. George, you ungrateful son, do you want to kill me? I smirked. Ungrateful? Ha, that's nothing compared to your precious son, who after graduation, goes around flirting with married women. Everyone froze, stunned by my words. Martin, looking like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, jumped up and shouted, what nonsense are you talking about? Shut up. Years of experience in the business world had sharpened my instincts. I could immediately see the panic in Martin's eyes. What's going on between you and Maria, the butcher Han's wife? You were caught red-handed. And they asked you to pay $300 to settle the matter, right? Martin had often skipped classes when he was in school, and after growing up, he surrounded himself with bad influences. Now he had dug himself into this mess. His face turned crimson, and in a panic, he said, "You're lying. In my past life, it was Martin who came begging me, telling me that Han the butcher was going to kill him. I had no choice but to promise to steal a family heirloom, my grandfather's rosewood pot, to give to Han. It was my soft-heartedness that caused me to be beaten by my parents almost to the point of vomiting blood, and Martin didn't even offer an explanation. This time, Martin, just wait for the consequences to come." My father snapped. "Martin, what's going on? Is your brother making things up?" Martin immediately replied, "Dad, George is lying. I was just hanging out outside, but I would never do something like that." My father turned to me and said, "I knew you were up to no good. You think I'll believe you, even if your brother is useless? You shouldn't be accusing him." I sneered. "We'll see if they'll come knocking on the door." At that moment, a commotion came from outside. Several strong men, some wielding iron rods, others with kitchen knives, were already at the door, glaring at us. Chapter 2. Outside. I could hear the shouting. "Come out here, you little brat. You've got some nerve. Quickly pay up. Come out here. Don't be a coward. Hurry up." The voices outside grew louder, and only then did my parents realize that the situation might not be a joke. My mother, in a panic, said, "What should we do? This brat really did cause trouble outside." Martin, already terrified, his legs trembling, said, "Mom, Dad, please help me. They want $300. If we can't pay, they'll kill me." When my parents heard the price, their faces immediately turned pale. $300 was no small amount in this day and age. Even if they emptied out all their savings, it wouldn't be enough. Boom. There was a loud crash, and the iron gate at the front of the house was kicked open. The lock, sliced by a kitchen knife, was thrown onto the ground. Han, the butcher, stormed in with his men, a greedy look on his face. He shouted, "Everyone, get out here, otherwise, I'll report you to the security team." My father quickly rushed out to meet him. After all, it was his son who caused the mess, and if this blew up, his future would be ruined. He said, "Big brothers, let's talk it out. Don't be angry." My father was smiling obsequiously, bowing to speak with them. Han, the butcher, spat on him, grabbed his shirt, and threw him to the ground. "What's there to talk about? It's your son who caused this mess. Hurry up and get the money." My mother, frantic, rushed to help my father up and asked, "Honey, are you okay?" She turned to Han, the butcher, and said, "We don't have that much money right now. Please give us some time. Once our eldest son starts working, we'll pay you." But the next moment, I sneered and said, "Brother Han, there's a saying, the debtor must be found. Martin is the one who caused this. Let him take responsibility. If he can't pay, you should go to his parents. This has nothing to do with me. You agree, right?" Han looked at me for a moment and then said solemnly, "I'm just a rough man, but I've always respected educated people like you. You're a good kid with good grades. Everyone around here knows it. You'll definitely succeed in the future. I won't make things hard for you. Just go about your business." I nodded. "Thank you, Brother Han." I was about to turn and leave. My mother shouted, "George, you heartless beast. How dare you leave?" I turned back and coldly swept my gaze over them. "I'm telling you now, we're severing ties from now on. I'm no longer a member of the Wong family." Han gave me a thumbs up. "You're really different from that little bastard Martin. You've got guts. I've always said, the Wongs have no real father or mother. George, you've suffered in that family." I turned and left. Han pointed at Martin. "Boy, didn't you say there's a rosewood antique in your house? Hurry up and bring it out. Let's call it even." Martin, terrified, collapsed onto the ground. He stammered, "We don't have it. Even if we did, we won't give it to you." My father saw that I was really going to leave and panicked. In a fit of rage, he suddenly became bold and rushed toward Han, grabbing the kitchen knife from his hand and charging toward me, shouting, "You little brat, try leaving again." I turned around just in time to see my father standing in front of me, the cold blade raised, about to strike my neck. But I only sneered. I turned and kicked hard. My father suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, and his body was sent flying backward. I watched as he struggled on the ground, but I felt no emotion. In my past life, once I started my business, I found a professional coach to teach me self-defense, including kickboxing. My father's strength was no match for me. Holding his stomach, my father, in shock, pointed at me. "Unfilial son, how dare you strike your father? Don't you fear lightning striking you down?" I sneered. People from the older generation love to use threats like, "Lightning will strike you," to control their children. How laughable. They're useless themselves, yet they expect the heavens to help them. Why should the heavens listen to them? My eyes swept across everyone present, those holding weapons, Martin, and my mother. They were all stunned and didn't dare to help my father up. Without a word, I turned and walked away. The shouting from Han and the men continued inside. I knew that the Wang family either had to bring out the family heirloom to cover Martin's mess, or they would have to pretend they never had a son. As for me, the most important thing now was to find a place to settle and start earning money. My grades were excellent, and with my acceptance into a prestigious university, I would receive scholarships. But even without tuition, the living expenses in a big city were astronomical. I called my friend, David. David's family runs a small restaurant. He and I had been friends since childhood, and sometimes, I even stayed at his place. I trusted David completely. The little money I had saved up, I kept with him. Since my parents would always rummage through my things, there was no way I could keep money on my own. When David heard that I had left home, he was shocked. After all, I was usually the soft one, the kind who could be easily controlled. How could I have confronted my family like this? He said, "Where are you now? You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you? If you don't have anywhere to go, come to me." I rubbed my temples. Indeed, if I didn't go to David's place, I had nowhere else to go. I wasn't going to be polite. I took the bus and went straight to David's house. When I arrived in an old neighborhood, I got off the bus and saw David waiting for me at the alley entrance. When David saw me, he was thrilled and waved excitedly. "Hey, over here." I crossed the street and walked up to him. "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be helping your parents at the restaurant?" "Ah, I told them you'd be coming tonight, so they came back early to cook," he replied. I was a little surprised. Didn't they care about the business? But I knew David's parents were kind-hearted and very welcoming. Although David didn't do well in school, his parents were always understanding and just wanted him to be happy. As David led me inside, he asked, "So, you really aren't going back?" I replied quietly, "Yeah, I've had enough." David patted me on the shoulder. Before long, I arrived at David's house. David casually opened the door and shouted inside, "Mom, Dad, I've got George." Chapter 3. A middle-aged couple walked out from inside, their faces lined with deep wrinkles, the marks of time making them appear slightly hunched. But in their eyes, there was a care for their juniors that I had never experienced before. Mrs. Chan said, Quick, come in, David. Go call your sister down." "Okay," David replied. I froze for a moment, and then joy surged through me. David's sister, Sophia, was the president of one of the top 3 tech companies in a city. At a young age, she had already established herself as a powerful woman. Just last year, she even made it onto the list of the top career managers under 30. David hurried upstairs, while Mr. and Mrs. Chan led me to the dining table. Mrs. Chan, with a look of concern, said, "Good boy, you really ran off like that. You're being impulsive." I gave a bitter smile and recounted everything that had happened today. The more Mr. and Mrs. Chan listened, the more their expressions turned somber. Finally, Mr. Chan couldn't hold back anymore. He said, "Listen to this. Is this something a human would do? For a useless brother who can't even get up, you're sacrificing your future. It's utterly unreasonable." I sighed. I couldn't stay there anymore. I'm planning to go to a city quickly and find a job, make some money for my tuition. At that moment, a soft voice suddenly came from downstairs. "Who's looking for a job?" Everyone looked up the stairs, and what appeared first were a pair of fair, slender legs. Then, a woman wrapped in a silk nightgown, with a slim and elegant figure, descended before me, a woman whose beauty could only be described as angelic. It was David's sister, Sophia. She was known as the beauty of the area. As soon as Mrs. Chan saw Sophia, she slapped her forehead and said, "Oh yes, how could I forget? Sophia works in a city. George, you can look for a part-time job with her." Sophia walked up to the table, sizing me up. She pursed her lips and said, "Just in time. My assistant just quit. You can come work for me temporarily." I responded, "Okay." I needed money right now, so I seized any opportunity. Plus, this job was perfect. Not only was my boss a beautiful female president, but it also offered a chance to expand my network, something that was invaluable in the business world. Given my past life's experience, I knew that if I had the right platform, a comeback would be possible. I felt this was an opportunity, like fate itself was helping me. Over the next few days, I stayed at David's house. David was eventually accepted into a second-tier university in a city. Originally, he had planned to wait until the start of the school year, but since I was unfamiliar with the city, he decided to go with me earlier. As soon as I got off the plane, I saw a stretch limousine parked outside the airport. A driver, dressed in a suit and white gloves, stood beside the car. As soon as he saw Sophia, he immediately rushed forward to take her suitcase, saying, "President Chan, Mr. Jean from the Jean Group is eager to meet with you and finalize the details of the cooperation." A slight look of distaste flashed in Sophia's eyes, almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. She furrowed her brows and said, "He dares come looking for me. Set up a dinner. I'll meet him tonight." I followed Sophia to her company, which was a tech firm. The office space was modern, stylish, and full of high-tech vibes. As we entered, I noticed many people were staring at me. Ahead of me was the most beautiful woman in the company. The president no less. Many men probably dreamed of having her, but Sophia didn't allow anyone to come within 3 meters of her. Yet now, there was a guy who not only got close but had actually become her assistant. Amidst the envious and jealous gazes, I followed Sophia into her office. The office was already tidied up, with a subtle fragrance of essential oils in the air, filling the whole room with a gentle aroma. At that moment, Sophia sat on the sofa, patted the seat beside her, and said, "What are you standing there for? Come sit." A rush of heat hit my face, and I couldn't help but blush. I sat down, and Sophia asked, "Want some wine?" She picked up a bottle of fine red wine from the table and poured 2 glasses, handing one to me. I had never drunk alcohol before. After 2 glasses, Sophia laughed and said, "Not bad. You handle your liquor well." She then lay down and said, "Come give me a massage." I thought I must have heard wrong, but seeing that Sophia was not opening her eyes, I walked behind her and gently massaged her shoulders. This was the first time I had ever touched a woman's skin, and it was soft and delicate. Unlike a man's, it felt like it had been soaked in milk. "Nice technique." Sophia suddenly spoke up. "You're coming with me to the dinner tonight," she added. I agreed. I had been to enough business dinners in my past life. I wasn't the kind of naive fool who'd never seen the world. These types of events were nothing new to me. Later that evening, I sat beside Sophia in a high-end Maybach as we headed to one of the top 3 luxury hotels in a city. As soon as we got out of the car, a staff member rushed to open the door and said, "President Chan, your private room is at the top floor, in the purple gold mist. Please follow me." Sophia was dressed in an elegant gown, and I wore a suit. We followed the staff up to the top floor. The top floor offered the best views of a city, and our private room had floor-to-ceiling windows, with a panoramic view of the city. As soon as we entered, several middle-aged men stood up. They all had smiles on their faces as they greeted Sophia. "Miss Chan, you finally arrived. We couldn't reach you by phone, and you weren't replying to our messages. We've been worried sick. President Chan, we need to finalize this contract tonight, or our company's funding chain will collapse." I could see that these men were all desperate to please her. Soon, their attention shifted to me standing beside her. One of them asked, "Hey, President Chan, did you change assistants? This guy looks pretty young. He seems like a college student." Another man said, "Why does he look so familiar?" Chapter 4. "Hey, isn't this the top scorer from the college entrance exam in XX province this year?" Another person chimed in, "I remember now. Yes, I have a relative whose child took the exam this year." And they shared the good news in the family group. "There's a photo of this kid in there." A few of the business owners gathered around, casting appreciative looks in my direction. They said, "This young man is really smart. If only our son were half as capable as him." "Yeah, are you interested in interning at my company? I'll pay you as if you're a regular employee." I was surrounded, and while Sophia didn't show much on her face, she was stunned. She hadn't expected George to be so impressive, and he had kept it all under wraps. She thought he would be overwhelmed by the situation. But to her surprise, he handled the business crowd with ease. Sophia even began to wonder if she had been mistaken. George seemed more like a CEO than she did. During the dinner, the main figure, Mr. Jean, began speaking. "President Chan, our group has invested over $1 billion in this tech project. If you sign, we can launch it immediately." Sophia smiled lightly and responded, "Mr. Jean, your concept is indeed great, but I've heard that your company is facing a financial crisis. You haven't paid your employees for 3 months. And now you're emptying your pockets for this project. Do you expect us to clean up your mess?" Mr. Jin's face instantly darkened. His intentions had been seen through, and it was now a matter of how to wrap things up. He laughed awkwardly and said, "Ha ha ha. President Chan, you misunderstood. We're not trying to drag you into anything. We come here with a win-win mindset." I scanned the room and noticed that while everyone was sitting there, they weren't engaging in the conversation between Mr. Jean and Sophia. They were whispering to each other, looking uneasy, as if they knew something was off. I smirked inwardly. I had suspected that these people were just brought along by Mr. Jean to support him, possibly even trying to take advantage of Sophia. But what they hadn't expected was that Sophia had already seen through their game. At this point, continuing the conversation about cooperation seemed impossible. Someone tried to smooth things over, saying, "Oh, President Chan, please don't misunderstand us. We're all willing to invest in your tech park project. The money is ready. We know Mr. Jean well, and we wouldn't partner with him if we didn't trust him. So, please, rest assured, he's fine." Soon, several others began patting their chests and promising there was no problem. They assumed that with so many people backing Mr. Jean, Sophia would surely sign and go along with the deal. If she didn't sign, it wouldn't just be about their cooperation, it would be a matter of Sophia offending so many businesses. This was more of a persuasion tactic, even a subtle threat. If it had been someone else, they might have backed down. But Sophia was no ordinary person. She had been in the business world for 7 or 8 years and knew how to handle situations like this. No small tricks would intimidate her. But just as she was about to speak, I, who had been silent the entire time, decided to speak up. Since that's the case, why don't we invite a third-party auditing firm to conduct an audit of all the companies involved in this project, and make the audit results public to all our partners? By doing this, everyone will feel assured. If not, it will seem like there's something to hide. I believe no one will reject a transparent audit like this, right? As soon as I finished speaking, the faces of the people in the room turned even darker. They exchanged uneasy glances but no one spoke. Sophia looked at me, surprised. This move wasn't exactly typical business practice. After all, no company would willingly open its books for an audit just for a contract. But to her surprise, this tactic worked. It had effectively intimidated the people in the room. I said, "Everyone, are you dissatisfied with our suggestion? We're only trying to ensure the sincerity of the cooperation." I pretended not to understand, putting on a clueless act. Someone finally couldn't hold back and said, "Hey, George, how can you say that? Do you not trust us?" One by one, others started chiming in. Yeah, we're all law-abiding citizens. How can you say something like that?" Another person added, "Exactly. We just wanted to see how things go with President Chan and Mr. Jean. We didn't expect you to be so suspicious of us." President Chan, is this your opinion? If so, we have nothing more to say. Let's just end it here. There's no point in continuing. Why should we keep trying if it's not going to work? The group began to stir and move towards the door. They had been watching Sophia and me closely, expecting us to panic when they left. But to their surprise, the more commotion they made, the calmer we appeared. Now, they had to wonder if their intentions had been completely exposed. As they were about to leave, Mr. Jean suddenly spun around and said with a sneer, "I'll tell you this, if you won't cooperate, then don't come crawling back later." He stormed off in anger. Sophia and I exchanged a look and couldn't help but laugh. We knew that Mr. Jean had been thoroughly intimidated. She said, "George, I didn't expect you to be so clever." That Mr. Jean was totally scared by you. I scratched my head and said, "If he wants to swindle our money, then he shouldn't blame us for not playing by the rules." In reality, I knew that Sophia had never intended to continue with the cooperation. She was just giving a clear enough signal at this moment to shut down Mr. Jean and his entourage. By me saying what I did, it shifted the blame to me, making it clear to anyone who heard that it was my fault, not Sophia's. Even if others suspected it was her idea, no one would dare make a big fuss about it. I helped Sophia out of the hotel. She was wearing 6 or 7 centimeter heels, and with the wine making her tipsy, walking was a bit difficult. I supported her, helping her into the car. She leaned back in the seat and soon fell asleep. The driver, seeing I wasn't getting into the car, didn't say anything and started driving. Once we were on our way, I returned to the hotel where I was staying temporarily. Now, I needed to find a place to settle in a city. Chapter 5. I knew that the housing prices in a city were high, but when I actually started looking for a place, I still underestimated the rent. I'm currently staying in a youth hostel, but it's not a long-term solution, as it's too far from both the school and Sophia's company. I needed to find a place that was close to the company but also wouldn't interfere with my classes. The apartments that met these criteria were almost all in the city center, and the locations were excellent. Looking at my meager savings, I felt really squeezed. But I didn't give up. I thought of all those great entrepreneurs, who wasn't once a nobody, climbing step by step to become a giant in their field. Even if I wasn't aiming to match those top tycoons, I could at least hold myself accountable. In the end, I found a small studio apartment just 3 streets away from Sophia's company. After some negotiation, I managed to get it for 3,000 yuan a month. I calculated my salary as an assistant, along with my savings, and figured that as long as I kept things frugal, I could manage and settle down in this city. With the housing issue sorted, the next thing on my agenda was the start of the semester. David procrastinated until the school term was about to start before arriving. I had assumed that Sophia would arrange a luxurious apartment for him, but to my surprise, she had him stay in the dormitory. David waved his hand dismissively. "I've gotten used to it. My sister just doesn't like me much. She says it's to train me." I sighed. Honestly, that might not be because she doesn't like him. It could just be a way of teaching him. Only those who have climbed from the bottom know how much effort and skill it takes to reach a higher level. Many people only see the shiny surface of success and envy it, but they rarely notice the hard work behind it. That's why successful people usually don't share their success with others. It's pointless. People just think you're showing off. So, it's better to stay quiet. For David, Sophia didn't pamper him with money or luxury. She made him walk step by step so he could become someone truly successful in the future. I understand all of this, but David doesn't. David had been pampered since he was a child and couldn't grasp why his sister was doing this. Since I didn't live on campus, and David didn't want to either, He also found an apartment near me, so we could go to school together. Coincidentally, we were both accepted into the same program. However, what excited David the most was that the campus beauty was also in our computer science major. When she first arrived, the guys in our major couldn't sit still, all trying to find out about her background. It turned out she was this year's top scorer in the college entrance exams from a province in the West. The staff from the top university had even flown to her home to recruit her. But why didn't she choose a more feminine field like humanities? According to the beauty, it was because she had a strong interest in computer science. David and I were heading to the cafeteria when he couldn't stop talking about the campus beauty. It was clear to me that David was deeply interested in her, even obsessed with her, but I wasn't too concerned. Having the experience of my past life, I knew that right now, the most important thing for me was to focus on building my career. As I was zoning out, David suddenly slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Quick, look over there." I followed the direction of his finger and saw the famous campus beauty right in front of us, and her gaze was locked on me. I furrowed my brows. While her expression was friendly, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more in her gaze, something almost affectionate. I was puzzled. Even David noticed that something seemed off. As we got closer to her, I couldn't take the constant staring any longer and decided to nod politely. The campus beauty seemed like she was about to walk over to us, but when she saw my polite but distant gesture, her smile immediately faded, replaced by awkwardness and a hint of helplessness. She simply walked past us without a word. David, who had expected her to come over, was left confused and asked, "Weird, do you know her?" I was just as puzzled. I didn't recognize her at all. David scratched his chin, then gave me a curious look and said, "Well, you're not exactly handsome enough to steal her heart. So how did you manage to catch her attention?" David's tone was somewhat displeased but not hostile. He thought that if the campus beauty was interested in one of his friends, that would actually be something to celebrate. David said, "Bro, I'm telling you, since the campus beauty has her eyes on you, you've got to grab this opportunity. Not everyone gets a chance to get close to her. If you win her over, you'll have it made for the next 4 years of university." I rolled my eyes at him and said, "Just because someone smiles at you, does that mean they like you? If I smiled at you, would you want to call me your godfather?" David punched me playfully and laughed. "Ha ha ha. If you want to be my godfather, at least treat me to a month's worth of meals." We both laughed as we walked toward the cafeteria, unaware that at that moment, as the campus beauty walked by, she looked back at me. Her expression seemed somewhat melancholic, and she quietly asked herself, "Does he really not recognize me?" It was lunchtime, so the cafeteria was packed with people. I topped up my meal card, grabbed my food, and sat down across from David. David suddenly said, "Hey, do you know our department is holding a coding competition? I heard that if you make it to the top 3, you get to go straight to the national coding contest." I didn't know about this. My information wasn't as up-to-date as David's. David went on, "The prize for winning this competition is 100,000 yuan, and having a prestigious contest on your resume will definitely give you an edge when applying for high-paying jobs." Just then, I noticed a poster on the wall, and David grabbed it, ripping it off and handing it to me. I said, "Isn't this poster everywhere?" David replied, "Yeah, it's everywhere. You're just noticing it now." Chapter 6. I glanced at the poster, and seeing that the organizing bodies were industry authorities, it was clear that this competition had a high level of prestige. I had been learning coding in my spare time outside of school. Though not many people knew about it, David was one of the few who did. Among those who knew, they all thought I had a natural talent for it. Looking at the poster, I was definitely tempted. When I got home, I opened my laptop and began designing my project. The preliminary round was an open competition where participants were required to design a shopping software for a supermarket, based on their own strengths. This wasn't a difficult program to create, but the challenge lay in tailoring it to the supermarket's specific needs, and then making it both simple to use and aesthetically pleasing. There were no clear-cut standards for judging, so while there was a lot of creative freedom, the scoring could vary widely. However, I didn't let that discourage me. I carefully analyzed some of the most commonly used software on the market, looking at their strengths and weaknesses, and quickly came up with a plan. A week later was the freshman welcome event. The department had booked the entire auditorium for the evening, with plans to host a Western-style dinner. Everyone could choose their own dance partner. I wasn't interested in this at all, so I asked my counselor if I could skip it, wanting to dedicate my time to the upcoming competition. However, the counselor simply gave me a glance and said that this was a group event, and I could only skip it if I had a sick note. I had no choice. If I pretended to be sick now, it would be too obvious. So, even though I didn't want to go, I still went with David. True to the reputation of the university's prestigious computer science department, our welcome party was far more glamorous than those from other departments. There were towering champagne fountains, a wide selection of Western dishes, and even carefully arranged live music performances. David, Upon seeing this scene, looked like a country bumpkin seeing the world for the first time, his eyes sparkling with excitement, he exclaimed, "Whoa, George, have you been to places like this before?" I wasn't really interested in all of this, so I replied, "You should eat and drink. Don't act like you've never seen this before. After all, your sister is a president." David rolled his eyes and said, "My sister is my sister, but I'm me. She never really cares about me. I'm not stupid, though lately, you've been talking about her a lot," David said, his tone becoming more inquisitive. He asked, "What's up? Do you have a thing for my sister?" I froze for a moment. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Sophia was indeed a rare beauty, and I'm sure any man who met her would have trouble forgetting her, but I wasn't someone who could ever match up to such a powerful woman. I said, "I'm just her assistant. What's wrong with mentioning her?" David didn't overthink it and figured my response made sense. Just before the dinner started, a few people who stood out entered, their hair dyed in striking colors, wearing large, eccentric necklaces, some even with cigarettes dangling from their mouths. The leader of the group spotted me and walked right up. He looked me up and down and, with a mocking look, said, "I heard you signed up for the national coding competition. What kind of courage do you have? A poor kid like you." David, about to snap back, was immediately stopped by me. I recognized these people. They were a few rich second-generation students from the department, all with some background, but they spent their time goofing off, and some of them had even been in trouble with the law several times. These kinds of people didn't concern me as long as they didn't mess with my core interests. Let them have their verbal jabs. I knew that right now I didn't have the strength or background to clash with these entitled young men from a city. Fighting with them would do me no good. I said, "The competition is based on skill. If you think you can do it, then the winner will naturally be you." I looked him in the eye, delivering my words confidently. As more people gathered around to watch, many were hoping to see me embarrassed. Someone shouted, "George, how did you manage to mess with Ito? Haha, you're in for trouble. Ito, come teach him a lesson. Does he really think he belongs at this dinner? He's lowering our level." The crowd's taunting grew louder, but I didn't react. I kept my composure, refusing to let my emotions show. This Makoto, who was the son of the vice president of the university, had little brains but wielded power because of his father. He could pretty much do whatever he wanted in the school. His arrival had even sparked some controversy online, which was quickly suppressed, showing just how strong his backing was. Makoto, seeing everyone flanking him, grew more confident. He poked me in the chest with his finger and arrogantly said, "I'm telling you, you better stay in your place. Don't try to steal my spotlight." With that, Makoto turned and walked away, not bothering to continue the conversation. Once the crowd dispersed, David exploded in anger. He said, "That guy is so arrogant. He thinks he's something just because he has a bit of background. Without his dad, he's nothing." After this incident, I had no desire to stay any longer, so I turned and prepared to leave. David decided to come with me. Back at my place, I planned to continue working on my program. I had the development and testing software ready on my computer and was planning to organize my thoughts and start working on my ideas. I began searching for information and refining my approach, and before I knew it, it was already 3 a.m. Just as I was about to go to bed, my phone suddenly buzzed with a message. To my surprise, it was from Willow, the campus beauty. Willow had found my contact in the class group and sent a friend request. I didn't think much of it at the time, since she was just a classmate, so I accepted. I didn't expect her to want to chat, thinking it was just a polite gesture since we were classmates. Willow's message read, "George, don't take what happened today to heart." I thought for a moment it was probably about what happened at the dinner, but honestly, I hadn't really been bothered by it. So, I replied, "It's nothing." Willow quickly replied, asking, "It's so late, you're still up?" I replied, "I'm preparing for the competition." And just like that, we ended up talking about software development. I was surprised to find out that Willow was actually very knowledgeable about software development. She even knew about several magazines, journals, and websites that I had never heard of before. She asked, "I have some internal resources from top developers. Would you be interested?" Chapter 7. When I saw Willow's message, I was instantly intrigued. I replied, "Okay, thank you. I could really use these." I didn't hesitate. These resources were exactly what I needed, and since she had them, I'd take advantage of the opportunity. She responded, "Most of these materials are in paper form. If you need them, we could meet up at a time that works for you. We can also discuss anything you're uncertain about." As she typed that, Willow was nervously wondering if she had phrased everything correctly, worrying whether she might have made George feel uncomfortable. She anxiously stared at her phone, waiting for his reply. After a long while, George finally replied with a simple "okay." She responded, "How about we meet tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock in the library?" After sending the message, Willow felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She collapsed onto her bed, her body relaxing. She stared at the ceiling, Unconsciously smiling, she thought to herself, how did this silly boy forget about me? The first time Willow met George was when they were both 5 years old. She had just started kindergarten, and the older kids in her class had bullied her. It was her first time encountering such a situation, and all she could do was cry. But then, out of nowhere, a dirty, skinny little boy appeared. He bravely stood in front of her, protecting her. Later, she learned that while George protected her outside, at home, he was the one being bullied. Their families lived close by, and sometimes she would see George kneeling in the yard as punishment. She would hear a middle-aged woman yelling at him late at night, but she didn't know how to help. So, when she had a bit of snack food, she'd bring it to school and share it with him. A year later, her father got a promotion, and she had to transfer schools. She cried in front of George, but his face remained emotionless. Even when the driver came to take her away, George merely watched, his hand nervously clutching the corner of his shirt. At the time, she didn't understand what that meant, but as she grew older, she began to understand that George's stoic demeanor came from the pain of his past. She realized that George's trauma had shaped him into someone who never fought for anything, someone who had grown up hiding his emotions. By the time she fully understood all this, she hadn't seen George in years, and she didn't even know if they'd ever meet again. However, when she applied to this university, she saw George's name again. So, she gave up her plan to attend medical school and chose computer science instead, becoming classmates with him. She knew that if she didn't make a move, even in the same school, there was a good chance she wouldn't have the chance to interact with George. The next afternoon, Willow arrived at the library early. The university library was large, and she found a quiet spot by the window. She ordered 2 cups of coffee and sent George the exact location. George quickly replied with a "okay." Willow knew that George wouldn't back out. Although they hadn't seen each other in years, she remembered everything about their time together as children. I arrived at the library and sat down in front of her, maintaining my usual calm demeanor, one that hid all emotions. I awkwardly greeted her. Hello. This was the first time I'd ever met a girl outside of school like this, especially in a library. Isn't this where couples usually go on dates? But I had no thoughts about that. My focus was still on winning the competition. Willow said, "These are the materials you need. I gathered them from the internet and friends at other universities. Some of these are unpublished, so you can use them." She pushed a stack of documents toward me. These materials included top foreign journals that were difficult to find in China, along with some folders that seemed to be resources Willow had compiled herself. I flipped through them and immediately realized how valuable this information was to me. I said, "Thank you so much. I can see that a lot of the ideas here are exactly what I need." Just flipping through the pages, I could feel that many of these resources were things I hadn't seen before, and it felt like a whole new world was opening up to me. "It's nothing," Willow replied with a smile. She didn't tell George that these materials had been compiled by her just last night. She had stayed up all night, requesting the latest materials from her friends abroad. After getting them, she quickly organized everything before rushing to the library in the morning. I began reading the materials and soon became completely absorbed. They contained so much useful information, stuff I couldn't find on free websites. Before I realized it, a cup of coffee appeared in front of me. Willow placed the coffee down gently and said softly, "Drink some. You must be thirsty after all that reading." For some reason, my ears suddenly felt hot, and I could feel my neck warming up. This was the first time I had such a reaction. I absent-mindedly picked up the coffee, took a sip, and then returned to reading the materials. Suddenly, I heard a soft rustle beside me. I turned to find that Willow had moved closer and was now sitting right next to me. It made me nervous. She had been sitting across from me, but now she was right next to me. She leaned slightly forward, resting her arms on the table, and pointed to a line of code in one of the journals. She asked, "Could you explain this to me?" Her voice was gentle, and there was something about it that made me feel strangely affected, as if it carried a special kind of magic. I replied, "Sure." I glanced at the lines of code and began explaining it to Willow. Without realizing it, the space between us grew smaller. The air in the room felt warmer, and I could feel a slight sweat on my cheek. Willow giggled and said, "It's not even that hot. Why are you sweating?" She pulled out a handkerchief from her bag and gently wiped my forehead. At that moment, I suddenly caught the familiar scent from the handkerchief. It reminded me of something from the past. Chapter 8. The scent on the handkerchief seemed strangely familiar, but I couldn't quite place when I had smelled it before. Instinctively, I pulled back a bit and said, "It's nothing. Just feeling a bit stuffy." Willow laughed softly, but just then, the door to the semi-enclosed section of the library suddenly opened, and a voice rang out, "George, what are you doing here?" I was startled and turned to see Makoto standing at the door, his grin filled with malice. Makoto stormed in, grabbed my shirt collar, and sneered, "You think you deserve to sit here drinking coffee with Willow? What's with these magazines? Are you trying to impress girls with this trash?" He slammed the stack of magazines onto the floor. Willow, furious, pointed at him and said, "Makoto, pick that up." Makoto hadn't even gotten the chance to act tough in front of Willow before he enraged her. At that moment, my voice rang out coldly. "Either let go now, or I'll dislocate your arm." I said it with an icy tone, and I gripped his hand that was holding my collar with my own, firmly. Makoto laughed mockingly. "You think you can act tough in front of me? Try it. Move an inch, and I'll show you what's what." The next moment, a scream pierced the air. I twisted his hand, nearly turning it 180 degrees, making him yelp in pain as his face contorted in agony. Instinctively, he dropped to his knees, trembling uncontrollably. I maintained a cold expression and said, "I told you, don't provoke me." Willow, standing by, was frozen in place, stunned by how unafraid I was of Makoto and how effortlessly I had taken him down. Makoto, despite his family's powerful background, was known for being a bully at school. Thanks to his connections and his skills in taekwondo, he had won several national competitions. His popularity with the school's troublemakers came not only from his fighting skills but also from his powerful father, which made him feel untouchable. But now, this seemingly unremarkable person, me, had effortlessly taken him down in one move. Makoto shouted through gritted teeth, "Let go of me." I said let go. He was biting down hard on his pain, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Willow stepped forward, her voice soft but urgent. "George, this is the library. Let's not make too much noise. Please let him go." I finally released him. Makoto, gasping for air, couldn't even meet my gaze anymore. After a long pause, he stood up and quickly walked away. As he reached the door, he seemed to realize how humiliating this was for him. He turned around and, in a voice dripping with venom, threatened, "I'm telling you, you're in for it now. You think you can get away with this? The school year is still long. I'll make sure you regret this." He had warned me before, but now, his threats seemed meaningless, especially after the public embarrassment I had caused him in front of Willow. Makoto stormed off, furious, while I stood there, feeling a mix of disdain and indifference. Honestly, I didn't want to engage with someone like him. It wasn't worth it. But now, after repeatedly provoking me and even trying to physically harm me, I had no choice but to defend myself. Despite his imposing figure and the fact that he seemed physically stronger, I could see through his facade. I knew he was hollow inside. I could tell that his confidence came from his background, but in a real confrontation, I knew I had the advantage. I had grown up doing manual labor, working on construction sites, building up my strength, which gave me the physical edge over him. Makoto was a rich, spoiled second-generation kid who spent his time partying, and he had no idea what real hard work was. I had held back earlier, but if I had used all my strength, I could have easily broken a couple of his bones with a single punch. After Makoto left, Willow finally spoke, cautiously sitting down next to me, still a little shaken. "George, I didn't expect you to be so strong. You even beat someone like Makoto." I casually flexed my wrist and replied, "It's nothing. Just grew up getting into fights." Willow seemed to believe me. She knew that George had always been getting into fights as a child, but not because he wanted trouble. He had been the one getting bullied. She knew that deep down, George was a good person, but he had never had anyone to protect him, so he learned to protect himself. I bent down and picked up the magazines that had been thrown on the floor, resuming my work. By the time evening came, we had finally formulated the basic structure for our design. When we left the library, it had already gotten dark. The students who lived on campus were packing up and heading back to their dorms, while we, who didn't stay on campus, were free to leave. Outside, I asked, "Where do you live? I'll give you a ride." Willow replied, "Rose Avenue. Is it on your way?" I hesitated for a moment. The apartments on Rose Avenue were all in the multi-million yuan range. Luxury homes even by a city's standards. I couldn't possibly live in one of those places. My own apartment was probably a place Willow had never even heard of. Suddenly, Willow seemed to realize something, and she quickly apologized. "Sorry, I didn't think." I smiled and said, "It's fine. I'll take you home. Thank you for giving me all those materials today." We walked together, heading towards her neighborhood. Rose Avenue wasn't far from the school. It was convenient for Willow, as her father had picked this location specifically to make her commute easier. Willow said, "My dad always says I like to sleep in, so if I lived too far from school, I'd be late every day." As she spoke, she glanced at me, but I remained silent, just listening quietly. Just as we walked a little farther, the sound of a car honking came from behind us. We turned around to see a luxury car pulling up. The car stopped right behind us, and the window rolled down. I was surprised to see that it was Sophia. Sophia smiled and said, "George, taking your girlfriend home?" Before I could say anything, Willow suddenly laughed and said, "Sophia, what are you talking about? We're just classmates." I realized something then and asked, "You two know each other?" Willow replied, "Sophia is a good friend of mine. She's worked with my family on several projects before." Now, I understood. Sophia said. I just got to the school gate to drop something off for my brother and saw you two walking here. I couldn't resist stopping by to say hi. Anyway, you two enjoy your chat. I'll be off now. She rolled up the window and drove away. As Sophia drove off, Willow seemed a bit upset and cautiously asked, "Are you really close with Sophia?" I didn't think much of it and replied, "I'm just her assistant." Chapter 9. Part-time. Willow didn't quite understand. I decided to tell her everything about what had happened before I came to university. After listening, Willow was shocked. She had only seen this kind of story in dramas. How could something like this happen in real life? But the truth was, it had happened to me. She asked, "So you're working part-time for her, just to make money?" I nodded. That's right. The cost of living in a city is really high. Even though I have a scholarship, it's not enough to cover everything. So I work part-time as her assistant on weekends. Willow sighed in relief. After all, Sophia was incredibly beautiful. Any man would find her incredibly attractive. Although Sophia was about 10 years older than me, men from all walks of life, from university students to successful professionals, were drawn to her. Unfortunately, Sophia's standards were extremely high, and no one could seem to catch her eye. The only person who seemed to give her trouble was her little brother, David. At this point, I sensed that Willow might have some other thoughts, but I didn't think much of it and casually asked, "Do you have something else in mind?" Willow thought for a moment that I had seen through her, but she just smiled and said, "You know, Sophia is not only beautiful but also very feminine. She must be the type of girl you guys like the most, right?" I subconsciously nodded. Sophia was indeed beautiful. She exuded the perfect mix of intellect and gentleness at the right age. It's the kind of allure that's hard for any man to resist. She is indeed beautiful, I replied without thinking. Willow's smile faded immediately, and she looked at me with a trace of resentment. I frowned, feeling confused. What was going on? Everything had seemed fine just moments ago. By the time we reached the entrance to Willow's luxurious neighborhood, she stopped talking and simply walked ahead. I couldn't figure out what had changed, and by the time we reached the gates of the neighborhood, Willow had remained silent. She said, "All right, I'm home." I looked at the high-end neighborhood gates with security guards, surveillance cameras everywhere. It was definitely a luxury neighborhood. "Okay, have a good rest. You have classes tomorrow," I said. Willow gave me one last wistful look, then turned and walked away without saying another word. I was even more puzzled. Based on Willow's personality, she would at least say, "Thank you" or something, but she didn't say a word and just left. I recalled David's stories about his relationships. He often complained about how women could be as unpredictable as thunderstorms, coming and going without warning. At the time, I thought it was an exaggeration, but now I was starting to understand. Once home, I decided to focus on refining my design plan. Willow had given me many suggestions that night, and her meticulous nature had helped me come up with several feasible ideas. I spent the entire night refining my work, and by about 4 a.m., I had finished. I packaged everything up and sent it to her with a message. "Take a look at this. We can discuss it more in the library tomorrow. This is your hard work too." She didn't reply, and I didn't think much of it. I grabbed a quick bite and went to bed. When I woke up at 8 a.m. to head to class, I saw I had an unread message. It was from Willow. She replied, "Okay, let's meet after class in the library." I felt a warmth in my chest and didn't know why, but suddenly, I felt happy. When I entered the classroom, I sat next to David, who immediately said, "I saw Makoto this morning with a few of his friends, some shady guys, walking into the school." I raised an eyebrow. "How do you know I fought with him yesterday?" David looked shocked. "You didn't know? Makoto's been telling everyone in the freshman group that he'll make sure you're kicked out of the school." I opened the freshman group chat, something I usually ignored, but David had added me to it. I scrolled through and found Makoto's message. He was trying to save face, only saying that I had provoked him, without mentioning the actual fight. I chuckled. This fool is trying to downplay it, turning being beaten into just provoking him. David seemed confused. "You're talking like you single-handedly beat him up." I turned and looked at him. "What? Do you think I couldn't handle him?" Before David could respond, there was a sudden commotion at the classroom door. Everyone turned to see what was going on. Makoto, along with several young men who looked to be in their early 20s, entered the room. They were glaring at everyone, and they didn't look like students. David grabbed my arm and shook it. "Quick, look, they really came for you. Can you see? They're all staring at you." I noticed, but I wasn't going to make a scene here. Makoto didn't directly approach me or cause a ruckus, likely because everyone had smartphones. If something happened, it could be recorded and uploaded online, which wouldn't be easy to brush off, even with his father's influence. They sat a few rows away from me, still glaring at me, making sure to keep their eyes on my every move. David asked, "What do we do now?" "I'm getting nervous," I answered. "Why are you nervous? They're after me, not you." David got agitated and said, "How can I leave you like this? I'm a loyal friend." I can't just abandon you. I laughed. Don't worry, they wouldn't dare do anything here. If they do, things will get out of hand quickly. David seemed to calm down, and then suggested, then don't go out these next few days. Talk to the counselor and maybe they can set you up with a bed in the dorm for a few nights. I smiled and didn't answer. Staying in the dorm wouldn't help. Once the lights went out, no one would know who was Makoto's lackey and who wasn't. Besides, hiding wouldn't solve anything. It needed to be dealt with. When class ended, I told David I was going to see the counselor. He assumed I had taken his advice, so he relaxed and didn't come with me. Just as I was about to leave the classroom, Willow suddenly came up behind me. George, where are you going? Chapter 10. Willow looked at me with concern in her eyes, but she didn't ask any more questions. I said, I'll handle it. I knew Willow was going to ask about Makoto bringing people to the school today, but this was my personal matter, and I didn't want to drag anyone else into it. However, Willow clearly wasn't ready to let it go. At that moment, students started leaving the classroom in small groups. Makoto and his entourage walked out of the classroom and headed straight toward us. Instinctively, I stepped in front of Willow, protecting her. Willow felt a warmth in her chest at the sight. She thought to herself, he's still like when we were kids, always protecting me. We expected things to escalate into a fight, but to my surprise, Makoto reached me, said nothing, gave a sinister smile, and turned around to walk away. The people with him didn't engage either. Although their glares were filled with malice, they didn't make a move. Willow was completely confused. She asked, what happened? Did they just come to intimidate you? I knew that wasn't the case. This was simply a provocation. If I acted, they would have a reason to retaliate, and if I didn't act, Makoto would have had his moment of power and would have gained some face, all while putting psychological pressure on me. Either way, it worked in his favor, but I couldn't let Willow know this. I said, it's fine, they probably just came to scare me. Just avoid them in the future. Willow frowned, clearly upset. He started it, and now he's warning you. That's unreasonable. I didn't want to discuss this further with Willow. I just wanted to leave, but then she suddenly said, let's go to the library. I was taken aback. Why was she still willing to follow me to the library after everything that happened? Was she really not scared by the earlier scene? She asked, what's wrong? You're not planning to settle things with Makoto, are you? Her keen senses picked up on my intentions. Realizing I wouldn't be leaving today, I decided to go to the library with Willow, so she wouldn't get suspicious. Once we got there, I was surprised to see that Willow had already improved upon the plan we worked on the night before. Our content was much more refined now, which was a huge help to me. I decided to jump right in and start coding. By the evening, I had quickly established a clear framework for the project. Willow was ecstatic. She smiled. You're amazing. Looking at the code I had written, I knew it had taken a lot of effort, but I also knew that Willow had contributed a great deal to it. We locked eyes for a moment, and the atmosphere between us grew increasingly intense in that enclosed space. But I was the first to break the moment. I stood up and said, I have some things to take care of, so I can't walk you back. I'll leave now. I hurriedly packed up my things and left in a rush. I didn't notice the look of disappointment in Willow's eyes. As I left the building, I suddenly noticed Makoto and his group walking out of the library. I narrowed my eyes, immediately sensing something was off. I found a brick in the garden and slipped it into my backpack. I walked toward the school gate, pretending like nothing was wrong. I glanced back a few times, relieved when I saw Willow hadn't followed me yet. When I reached the school gate, I saw Makoto and his crew standing there. They were leaning against a street lamp, and when they saw me, Makoto swaggered forward and waved mockingly. I wasn't afraid. I walked toward them calmly. We reached a spot on the road where the school surveillance cameras couldn't see. Makoto sneered, you're pretty bold. Huh? Hanging out with the campus beauty. Didn't anyone tell you that people like you, from the lower social classes, should know their place? His voice was full of arrogance, and he looked at me with contempt. I smirked and said, with all your money and power, yet the campus beauty doesn't even look at you. Maybe you should be the one who knows your place. The arrogance and disdain on Makoto's face vanished instantly, replaced by a barely contained anger. Having his most embarrassing truth exposed, especially in front of others, made Makoto lose his composure. He didn't waste any more words and immediately ordered his men, take him down. As they lunged at me, I kicked Makoto in the chest. He crashed to the ground with a loud thud. While his gang was still frozen in shock, I pulled out the brick from my bag and took slow, deliberate steps toward them. The once cocky group fell silent, too scared to say a word. As I moved closer, they started retreating. Even Makoto, gritting his teeth in pain, scrambled to his feet with the help of his friends, backing away from me. I said coldly, stay away from me from now on. I'm not someone you want to mess with. If you keep provoking me, I'll make you regret it. With that, I tossed the brick at their feet. The fear in their eyes was evident as they quickly turned and fled. I watched them run off, feeling a mixture of frustration and resignation. I grabbed my bag and dusted it off, ready to leave. But just as I turned around, I saw Willow standing behind me. I froze. She wasn't too close, just standing by the roadside. Her eyes filled with concern and something else I couldn't quite place. A flood of memories rushed over me. It reminded me of a time when, after a fight, there had been another girl standing behind me, looking at me with those same anxious, worried eyes. Suddenly, everything clicked. Now I understood why Willow had been so kind to me, why she had treated me differently, why the campus beauty had also shown me kindness. It all made sense. Willow could sense that I had figured something out. She held back her joy and walked up to me. I said, "I understand why you like me now." The words, "like me," instantly revealed Willow's feelings. She was momentarily stunned, unsure of how to respond. Then she smiled and asked, "So, what do you think? Can we be together?" I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward and hugged Willow. Willow froze for a moment, but the next second, a wave of joy surged through her, and she hugged me back tightly. That night, I still walked Willow home. This time, she didn't just turn and walk away. Instead, she said, "You have to win this competition." I nodded, my expression calm but firm. "I will." Chapter 11. Although I was now officially with Willow, I didn't let myself get distracted by the relationship. The competition was approaching fast, and I still needed to finish developing my software. Meanwhile, David was feeling sorry for himself, thinking I had disappeared because Makoto had taken me out. He had no idea I was spending all my time in the library with Willow after class. Despite the immense difficulty we were facing with the project, Willow and I were managing quite well. Our technical skills were far above the average. One day, Willow looked concerned and said, "I heard Makoto has recruited some gold medal winners from international competitions, and his father even arranged for a few professor-level experts to help him." I had suspected this from the start, but it didn't worry me. Makoto was a fraud at heart. Even if he had the best resources, he still wouldn't be able to handle the judges' questions. He simply lacked the depth required. But Willow seemed to be genuinely worried. I squeezed her hand reassuringly and said, "Trust me, trust us." Willow met my gaze and nodded seriously. "Okay." Her words gave me confidence. Willow had never lacked self-assurance, but right now, she was worried about me losing. She didn't want me to fail. She suddenly felt a bit regretful for telling me that night to win. Later, she realized it might have added unnecessary pressure on me. Right now, winning was the only way to stabilize my position at school. Especially with Makoto gunning for me. She wanted everyone to see how capable I was. The day of the preliminary competition arrived. I sat in the contestant preparation area, running my code one last time before uploading it to the competition's backend. When I submitted it, Willow said, "Good luck." The competition began soon after. Since I had drawn a later spot in the lineup, I had the chance to watch several contestants before it was my turn. David came over and said, "I saw Makoto's order is right after yours. You'll go, then he will." Willow frowned slightly. Could it be intentional? I wasn't worried at all. I didn't care whether Makoto was right before or after me on stage. In fact, I didn't even consider him a threat. But if he was trying to provoke me, then I'd be ready to face him head on. When I went on stage, the judges seemed particularly intrigued by me. I was the only contestant without any backing, and among the submitted coding process lists, there were only two names, mine and someone else's. I calmly opened my laptop, projected it onto the big screen, and began explaining my approach. The whole process went smoothly, and I finished my presentation without a hitch. Next up was Makoto. However, I noticed something odd during his presentation. While his work looked impressive, definitely among the top tier of competitors, it was clear that there were small flaws in his ideas. Flaws that could have easily been avoided. Makoto had either failed to correct them or, worse, had highlighted them in his explanation. These mistakes were easy to overlook. If anyone noticed, they might just think Makoto was less skilled, which would explain the minor errors in his explanation. But I noticed something strange. Makoto spoke fluently on the more complicated parts of his project, but when it came to those easily explainable issues, his explanation faltered. Although I found it odd, I didn't tell Willow or David. David was busy complaining about Makoto's skill level, but I just shrugged it off. The competition concluded, and it was time for the tense awards ceremony. Willow said, "You're definitely in the top 3. I agreed with her. I was confident, but while we were in the backstage area, Makoto suddenly approached us. When he stepped forward, Willow and David immediately tensed up. I knew exactly why he was here. Makoto looked at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and said, "Nice job today. You should have taken first place." I replied flatly, "Thanks." I didn't feel like engaging in any further conversation with him, so I went silent. But Makoto wasn't done. He said, "Make sure you stand firm when they announce the awards. Don't fall too hard." I frowned, sensing that Makoto wasn't just trying to provoke me, he seemed to be giving me a warning. The awards ceremony began, and the rankings were gradually revealed. The first place winner, as expected, was me. Makoto took second place. Our projects were very close in quality, but I had demonstrated a higher level of professionalism during my presentation, which made me stand out. The final judges explained this when announcing the results, but then, something completely unexpected happened. When the guest presenter was announced, I was shocked to see it was Sophia. She smiled and said, "The first place winner will receive an internship opportunity at Chan Corporation." Sophia's company was a giant in the tech industry, and having an internship there was almost like earning a prestigious stamp of approval. Just as Sophia was about to place the trophy in my hands, Makoto suddenly interrupted loudly. "Hold on, I have something important to report. George's work was stolen, and he's already the assistant of President Chan. This is cheating." The room fell silent, and whispers quickly spread among the crowd. Suddenly, it hit me. No wonder Makoto had been so restrained earlier. He had been setting me up to take a fall. "You're lying." Before I could speak, David angrily stepped forward and shouted, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Makoto sneered and said, "I bet you all don't know, but our dear friend George here is actually very close to Sophia, President Chan's brother. They've been helping him all along." George used his connection with David to get into Chan Corporation as an assistant, and then got Sophia to push for him behind the scenes to make sure he got first place. You all see that, don't you? David was furious, charging at Makoto, but he was immediately stopped by the security guards. The host, looking flustered but trying to maintain control, asked, "George, do you have anything to say?" Chapter 12. I had realized long before Makoto walked in that he was fully prepared. He had dug up everything about my connection with Sophia's company and had crafted a story that seemed airtight. No one would be able to poke holes in it. If he stirred up enough emotions, it would be easy to frame me for cheating. Sophia, standing by, subtly shook her head, signaling me to stay calm. Having spent years navigating the business world, Sophia could easily see through Makoto's tactics. She was most worried that, in my fiery temper, I might rush into a confrontation and make things worse. If I reacted angrily, it would give them the perfect reason to accuse me. I understood what she was thinking and gave her a reassuring glance. I stepped forward, speaking calmly. "In that case, why don't we let Makoto finish his statement? I'm not in a hurry to rebut. I'm sure he's done his homework, or else he wouldn't be bringing these accusations in front of everyone." I even gestured toward Makoto, inviting him to speak. Makoto, thinking I was on the verge of collapsing, couldn't resist the urge to step forward. He thought I was simply struggling, about to be humiliated in front of everyone. He walked to the center of the room and announced loudly, "Maybe you won't believe me, but I have witnesses who can prove George is nothing but a shameless thief with no morals." Makoto gave a subtle nod to someone in the audience, and suddenly, my parents walked out. This was the first time they had ever been in a place like this, and they looked a bit out of place. I could see the calculating look in their eyes as they scanned the room. Behind them was Martin, who grinned when he saw me. My mother took the microphone, and Makoto whispered something to her. Then she began to sob dramatically, addressing the audience. "Students, judges, I'm ashamed to say I gave birth to such a son. George is a cold-hearted person. Not only did he steal his younger brother Martin's work to enter this competition, but he even threatened to cut ties with us. Word of this has spread in our small town. I'm here today to expose my son's unspeakable actions, but he is still my son, so I ask for leniency. Please, don't be too harsh with him." She continued to cry, making it seem like she had been deeply wronged. The atmosphere in the room quickly turned chaotic, and I was pushed into the spotlight, with everyone turning their anger toward me. Makoto's allies stirred up the crowd even more, and soon it felt like a riot was about to break out. Martin walked up, holding my mother's hand and pretending to be strong despite the heavy emotional burden, saying, "My brother has always bullied me. We both learned to code together, but he's always been clueless about it. I tried to help him, showing him my programs, thinking he could learn. I didn't want to confront him, but he's crossed the line by stealing my work for the competition. I can't let him keep making these mistakes." With that, Martin bowed deeply to me and said, "Brother, I did this for your own good. Don't blame me." A round of applause erupted from the audience. After the applause, the crowd turned to viciously accuse and insult me. They shouted, "Cancel George's results immediately. Fairness and transparency are not just empty words. Expel George. I don't want to study with this kind of person. He has the nerve to compete. What a disgrace. He should leave and withdraw from school. Shameless. Truly shameless." The mood in the room was growing increasingly impatient, and it seemed like the crowd wanted to drag me out. The host, trying to calm everyone down, asked the judges, "Judges, do you think you should reconsider the scoring?" Although the judges were satisfied with my performance and acknowledged my work as excellent, the situation had become too volatile. There were too many witnesses, and they were unsure whose side to take. After some discussion, the judges reluctantly decided to disqualify me. One of the judges stood and said, "We've discussed the matter, and we've decided to disqualify George's results. Wait. I suddenly spoke, and the whole room's attention turned toward me. Someone shouted, "What more do you have to say? Your own parents have come forward to accuse you." Yeah, don't bother trying to justify yourself. No one will believe you now. I smiled calmly and said, "Even a condemned criminal has the right to defend himself. Why shouldn't I have the chance to speak?" I turned to the audience, then looked directly at Martin. I have nothing to say about my brother, but as his older brother, I honestly had no idea he was capable of writing such programs. Since that's the case, why don't we let my brother explain the program? Let him tell us exactly what the framework is and how it works. Martin froze, unable to say a word, but the audience wasn't backing down. They shouted, "Go ahead. Since it's your work, explain it. Let's see you prove it." "That's right. You can do it. Don't worry. What's yours is yours. No one can take it from you." At this moment, Makoto stepped in and said, "You already introduced the program yourself. Since you're the developer, shouldn't Martin be able to explain it better than you? Stop wasting everyone's time. Just confess and save yourself some trouble." Seeing that the situation was slipping away, my mother hurriedly chimed in, "George, you've been bullying your brother since you were a child, and now you're publicly attacking him. How could you be so malicious? You're a heartless, ungrateful child." I was so angry that I almost laughed, but I kept my cool and calmly asked, "Bullied him? What about when you tried to take my admission notice to give it to Martin so he could replace me? Wasn't that bullying him?" The crowd instantly erupted into chaos. Makoto hurriedly tried to shut me down. "Don't change the subject. Admit your guilt, and stop wasting everyone's time." Willow stepped forward, wanting to speak on my behalf, but I shot her a look, signaling her to step back. She reluctantly held herself back. I said, "Fine, we won't waste any more time. My request is simple. If Martin can explain this program clearly, tell us how the framework works and what he used, I'll admit it." The crowd agreed, and everyone turned to Martin, eagerly waiting for him to speak. But to everyone's surprise, Martin broke into a cold sweat and collapsed onto the floor. Chapter 13. The sight of Martin collapsing in front of everyone startled the entire room. I scoffed. He was either pretending, or he was genuinely scared. Either way, it made him look pathetic. The host, seeing the situation unfold, hurriedly called for someone to check on Martin. Makoto immediately turned to me and scolded, "George, look what you've done to your brother. He's a good kid, and yet you're pressuring him in front of everyone like this." I countered without hesitation, "How much did you pay him?" Makoto was stunned. He hadn't expected me to ask him directly like that in front of everyone. Of course, he couldn't admit it, so he stammered, "What are you talking about? I just received a request for help. Out of pity, I assisted them. How could you say I paid them?" I sneered, continuing, "Isn't it convenient how my parents and brother just happened to seek help from you?" Even the least perceptive people in the room were beginning to doubt Makoto's version of events. I wasn't trying to downplay the situation. I was bringing the truth to the surface. Makoto clenched his teeth, thinking he would quickly bring me down, but instead, I had caught him in a lie, turning the tables on him. The school nurse arrived soon after, and after examining Martin, confirmed there was nothing physically wrong with him, just extreme stress from the situation. Makoto hurriedly said, "Then get him some rest. No, take him to the hospital to check. We can't let anything happen to him." My mother, sensing the shift in the situation, began to yell, "George, look at what you've done to your brother. It's all your fault." My father, dramatically falling to his knees, cried out to the audience, "It's all my fault. I raised a son like this. I can't live with myself. If anything happens to my son, I'll just die." Makoto saw the chaos was working in his favor and gestured for a few people to step forward and escort Martin away. But David, quick on his feet, moved in and blocked them. He grabbed Martin's arm and angrily demanded, "Tell us, who instructed you to do this?" Martin's eyes were glazed over, his mind foggy from the pressure. All he could remember was that Makoto had approached them, offering a few tens of thousands of yuan to help him bring me down. He even promised that Martin could get a place at the school if he succeeded. This news had thrilled my parents, but Martin wasn't interested in studying, he just wanted the money. But they had refused him. It dawned on me that Martin was nothing but a tool for Makoto's scheme. Unable to bear the pressure any longer, Martin broke down in front of everyone, sobbing uncontrollably. The room fell into a stunned silence. The sudden reversal left everyone speechless. "I was wrong. I'm sorry, brother. Please forgive me. I won't do it again. I don't know anything about programming. This project isn't mine. It's my brother's. Please, let me go home. I want to go home. Mom, Dad, let's go home." I couldn't help but smile faintly. I knew Martin would crack under pressure. He was the kind of person who would fall apart with the slightest push. I continued, "Everyone can hear what Martin is saying, right? This is why he couldn't explain anything technical, because he doesn't know anything about programming. In our hometown, he has a terrible reputation. You all want to know how I became Chan's assistant. Let me tell you, It's because my so-called parents wanted to take my admission letter and use it for my useless brother. I refused. So I ran away from home and severed ties with them. I had nowhere to go. So I stayed with a friend, David. A city was always my dream place to study and grow. President Chan saw how I was struggling. So he gave me a part-time job, allowing me to work and earn money. That's the whole story. The crowd immediately murmured in sympathy. Realizing how tough my situation had been, the mood shifted, and everyone started condemning my parents. Before my mother could escalate the situation, the host quickly gestured for security to intervene, and 2 security guards immediately escorted my parents off the stage. My mother was forcibly removed, but she still yelled as she was dragged away. "George, you ungrateful son, I can't believe I raised you like this. You're a heartless, ungrateful son." My father, more rational than my mother, immediately shouted, "Ito, we didn't succeed, but the money's gone. Don't think we'll return it. It's already spent." Makoto was furious and blurted out, "I don't understand what you're saying. If you keep making false accusations, I'll call the police." But by now, everyone in the room knew Makoto had orchestrated everything behind the scenes. I didn't even look at him. I simply turned to the judges and said calmly, "If there's no further issue, shall we get back to the matter at hand?" The judges, now snapping out of their shock, began discussing the situation. After a long deliberation, the same judge who had been interrupted earlier stood up. "We, the judges, have decided to keep the original rankings as they are but disqualify Makoto's score. The following contestants will move up 1 place." The contestant who came in 4th was ecstatic, jumping up in celebration. Makoto, infuriated, threw his microphone down and charged at me. Just as he swung his fist, I didn't move. I stood there, calm. In the next second, I executed a perfect shoulder throw and slammed him to the ground. The news of my first-place victory spread throughout the school, but I didn't celebrate wildly. Instead, I went out for dinner with Sophia, David, and Willow. I chose a decent restaurant, though the meal cost almost 2 months' worth of my salary. But I gritted my teeth and booked a table anyway. When we arrived, seeing the upscale setting, David immediately joked, all right, I'm treating you to a meal today. George, you almost scared me to death earlier." Willow laughed and said, "What are you scared of? They were coming after George, not you." Once we got to the private room, the waiter took our orders, and as he left, Sophia suddenly asked, "Have you told your parents about your relationship yet?" Chapter 14. Though the question seemed directed at both of us, Sophia's eyes were fixed on Willow. I clearly had nothing to discuss. It was Willow who had the more significant concerns. The Liu family was well known in a city, with Willow's father enjoying a meteoric rise in his career, making him one of the most influential figures around. Naturally, all eyes were on him, and by extension, on Willow's every move. The idea of the Liu family's daughter dating someone was bound to attract attention, and with my background, I was nothing worth discussing. Before Willow had the chance to speak, her phone rang. Willow immediately opened her phone to see it was her father calling. Liu's father was a busy man and only reached out when there was something serious. She quickly answered the call and left the room. I furrowed my brows slightly. Sophia turned to me, sensing my discomfort. "George, Liu's uncle isn't the type to judge based on status. Even if he disagrees with you and Willow being together, he wouldn't make things difficult for you." David patted me on the back with a smile. "I trust you, George. I have a great eye for people, and I know you're the right guy." I wasn't in the mood for jokes, but still managed a small smile and said, "All right, no worries. Regardless, I'll do my best to make it work." Sophia gave me a reassuring glance. "Don't worry, I'll speak well of you to him. You've got good character and ambition. You'll do well in the future." I knew Sophia was comforting me, but her words did give me a bit of confidence. The thing is, the gap in our backgrounds couldn't just be bridged by effort alone. In my time in a city, I had already felt how different this place was. It wasn't just about being talented or hardworking. Even if gold would shine eventually, a city glittered with an overwhelming number of shining stars. There were so many people more capable than me here. I didn't even rank among them. Sophia and David continued to encourage me for a while before Willow finally returned. Willow entered and immediately looked at me, and naturally, everyone's eyes followed her. "George, my dad called," she said. "He knows about us and wants to meet you." Her tone was cautious, and no matter how she phrased it, the atmosphere became much colder. "Sure," I said casually, trying to keep my calm. "When is he free?" Willow replied, "He wants to meet this weekend." David was taken aback. It was rare for someone to meet the parents so soon, especially with such urgency. It felt like there was no time to prepare. "That's the day after tomorrow." I thought for a moment, then added, "I'll go buy something for him tomorrow and bring it over the day after." Willow nodded in agreement. The dinner, originally meant to celebrate, now felt heavy with unsaid words. Despite Sophia and David's lively attempts to lift the mood, everyone seemed lost in thought. After the meal, I walked Willow back to her place. On the way, we didn't speak much, but both of us subconsciously slowed our pace. At the entrance to her neighborhood, I said, "Get some rest, we'll go shopping tomorrow." I turned to leave, but Willow suddenly called out to me, "George, what if my dad doesn't approve of us being together?" It was the question she had wanted to ask from the very beginning of our relationship. Although we had only been together for less than a month, this thought had been weighing on her for a while. She had wanted to ask that night, but held back, not wanting to bring it up in front of others. But now, she had to know. How could she introduce me to her parents if her father didn't approve? I thought for a moment but finally replied firmly, "It's fine, I won't give up." Upon hearing my answer, Willow's tears suddenly began to fall. She had been so afraid of me giving her a bad answer, and now, with my words, she could finally breathe easy. I meant what I said. Even if her dad didn't approve, I wasn't going to give up. Willow suddenly stepped forward and embraced me. I returned the hug. The little girl I had always protected had grown up, and even now, she was still the same as before, emotional and in need of support. Letting go of her was harder than I had imagined. On the weekend, I arrived at Willow's neighborhood in the afternoon, waiting for her so we could go to the Liu family's house together. Her father's driver came to pick us up. The Liu family's residence was located in the suburbs, far from the city center. While the area lacked entertainment spots, the air quality was far superior to the bustling city. This area was a popular choice for a city's elite. When we arrived at the Liu family's standalone villa, Willow took my hand and led me inside. I held the gift I had bought, following her into the house. The living room was grand, with a distinguished-looking couple sitting on the couch. "Dad, Mom, I've brought George back," Willow said. Liu father glanced at me before I stepped forward, placing the gift in front of them. "Good evening, Uncle and Aunt. I'm George, Willow's classmate," I said respectfully. "Sit down," Liu father replied calmly, his voice heavy with authority. Liu mother smiled at me gracefully. After a while, the conversation shifted to my family. I didn't shy away from sharing the truth about my situation, explaining everything honestly. I had expected this to be a setback, but surprisingly, Willow's father relaxed his previously tense expression as he listened. When I finished, I concluded, "Please don't worry, I've severed ties with my family. I won't let Willow suffer because of them." Willow's father suddenly chuckled. "You're a very naive kid." Willow was taken aback. "Dad, what do you mean by that? He's just being honest with you." He waved his hand at her to stay quiet, then turned to me and said, "I already knew about your family situation. The reason I asked today was to see how you would respond. I didn't expect you to be so open about everything." I remained composed and replied, "I don't carry that as a burden. As the saying goes, he who is entrusted with a great task will endure hardship. That's just the way it is." His gaze softened with a hint of appreciation. "All right then," he said, "we'll treat this as a simple first meeting. I've heard you're about to compete in a national competition. If you win, we can talk about marriage." Chapter 15. Willow was stunned. Marriage? I was taken aback too. I hadn't expected that, especially not on our first meeting. But then I realized, I knew the Liu family's stature. They had probably already thoroughly investigated me, even more than I knew myself, including my character. For them, it wasn't about probing and understanding. It was about seeing if I was worth their daughter. Liu father didn't care about my background. What mattered was my future. With that thought in mind, I stood up and spoke firmly to them. "Please rest assured, I will work hard and not disappoint your expectations." My tone was determined, and Liu father seemed to view me in a new light. Truthfully, having good character and morals was valuable, but it wouldn't be enough for me to be the one for his daughter. However, Liu father, seeing that I was young and eager, was willing to give me the opportunity to prove myself. That was exactly what I expected, and that's why I readily accepted and made a firm promise. That evening, Willow's parents invited us to dinner, and they prepared a feast to welcome me. During the meal, I finally got a sense of what family gatherings were like. After we finished, Liu father and Liu mother didn't ask us to stay any longer but wished us well and reminded us to work hard. On the way back, both Willow and I felt a huge weight lift off our shoulders. I, especially, felt a great sense of relief. Willow's father's reaction had completely caught me off guard. I had originally thought he might throw the gifts I brought into the trash, scold me, and kick me out. But instead, he had been understanding and accommodating. But now I also knew my shortcomings. The difference between Willow and me was still vast. I knew that Willow wasn't the spoiled daughter of a rich family. She was capable enough to achieve greatness on her own, even without her family's influence. And I, too, had to keep pushing forward to become a better person, regardless of the circumstances. When I dropped Willow off at her neighborhood entrance, she hugged me on her own initiative. After a long moment, she reluctantly let go. Just then, I lowered my head and kissed Willow. She was startled at first. Then her whole body tensed up before finally relaxing and accepting it. "I'll do my best," I whispered. Willow, gazing at the serious George in front of her, felt warmth spread through her heart. She knew she had made the right choice. George was still the boy who would charge ahead for her, just like when they were kids. 6 months later, the national coding competition was held in a city. I brought my project to the competition venue, and David was beyond excited. At first, he had suggested I join this competition mainly because I needed money, thinking I could earn some extra cash. He never expected me to actually make it this far. Willow and David sat in the best seats in the audience area reserved for family members. After 6 months of hard work, my performance this time was far superior to my last. Many of the judges nodded in approval. As expected, I won first place in the competition with my innate talent and hard work. After winning, I immediately handed my trophy to Willow. Overwhelmed with joy, Willow hugged me in front of everyone. My design was recognized in the industry, and my talent gained acknowledgement. Many big tech companies even reached out to offer me opportunities. However, I still didn't take any of them. I wanted to focus on finishing my studies first. After the competition ended, we went out to celebrate. David looked at me in disbelief as I turned down several impressive offers from major companies. He couldn't understand it. You're turning down a job where the base salary is $30,000, and with bonuses, you could easily earn $1 million a year. You're rejecting that, he exclaimed. And this other company, if you work there for 2 years, they'll help you get an A-city residence permit and offer you double the performance bonus. How could you say no? David was truly regretting it. These were offers that any student would be thrilled to accept. I laughed and said, I'm not ungrateful. With that, I turned toward Sophia, who chimed in with a smile. I've already made arrangements for George. As soon as he graduates, he'll join my company with a starting salary of $100,000, plus double the bonuses and company shares. Doesn't that sound better than all those other offers? David was stunned. That much? Sophia playfully smacked his head and said, if you had George's abilities, I'd give you the same deal. David rubbed his head and laughed. Oh, you know what my level is. Everyone in the room laughed. I knew that the offer from Sophia was far beyond what I was capable of right now, but I accepted it. First, I needed the money. Second, Sophia had helped me when I came to a city, giving me a part-time job that kept me from starving on the streets. I wasn't one to forget such things. Sophia helped me, and now it was my turn to help her. By the way, David asked, when are you two getting married? Willow blushed and said, my dad called earlier and congratulated George on winning. He said we need to go back this weekend to discuss the wedding. Congratulations, David said, his voice full of excitement. At that moment, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest. The thing I had been worried about, that Lou's father might change his mind, hadn't happened. Now, I could breathe a sigh of relief. That evening, I walked back with Willow. I suddenly asked, why is it that we ended up in the same class? Willow paused. George had clearly already noticed how unusual it was. If I had tried to brush it off as a coincidence, I knew it wouldn't work. So, she explained how she had switched her major after realizing we were going to the same school. I had expected to be angry, but instead, I sighed softly and tightened my grip on her hand. Thank you. That one simple thank you made Willow feel incredibly happy. Knowing that the men she loved truly understood her, the night was perfect, and everything felt just right.